Welcome to This Week in the PNFL. I'm your host, Mark Hill, and along for the ride are my two co-hosts, Mitch Grawl and Dean Chambers. How you doing today, gentlemen?
Fantastic.
All right, we are doing good. So, we have completed our draft. I would say it's probably, in my time in the league, it's probably the quickest draft that we've had. I believe it was basically conducted over a weekend. We started on a Friday, Saturday, and wrapped it up on a Sunday. So what we're going to do on this week's show, we're going to go through the 7 rounds in the draft, who was all selected, touch on some key people that were drafted, and then we're going to go into an analysis. Mitch has something that he put together for an analysis, and we're going to kind of kick that around a little bit and see what we have there and what came up out of that. So that is the plan for today's show. So if everybody is ready.
Are we not going to do the way too early predictions for the season, or we're going to hold off to at least training camp?
You know what? I think we could probably kick that around at the end after we finish. Before we wrap it up, we could probably throw that out there as well. I think that might be kind of interesting.
Maybe we'll see. We'll see how much time we have left, right?
Yeah, we can do that. Take a look at that and see what we got. Yeah, that sounds pretty good. Okay, so
please just make we're not on a television format where we're like restricted to a half-hour slot. We can just make time.
Yeah, well, we're supposed to be keeping our show to around 35 minutes, and we tend to go over. Well, we go over almost every week, so.
That's right. Hey, and we just spent the last 2.5 minutes talking about something we didn't talk about before the show.
There you go. So, hopefully you guys are enjoying it as you guys are sitting there doing your training camps. So,
yeah,
let's go ahead and jump right into it. So, as we all know, we completed the draft, and we're going to kick around some ideas or kick out some thoughts. And as we are looking at the first round picks, which players stand out to you guys based off of your analysis? Either one of you guys jump in, and then you guys kind of kick it around. Go ahead. Anyone?
Go ahead, Dean. What you thinking?
If you're looking for cornerbacks, you definitely look to the 2 players that Detroit drafted. Those are going to be solid long-term starters going into the future. And if you're looking at safeties, we have 2 safeties that were drafted in the first round, and we have probably 2 or 3 safeties drafted after them that will probably be long-term solid starters as well. We had a number of wide receivers drafted, and I know there's a lot of variation in views of the different general managers in the league as to who makes the best wide receiver for their particular offense. So we all have different ways of viewing that, and some of the wide receivers drafted are going to be highly ranked by some GMs and not so highly ranked by others. And I think if you look at any of the wide receivers drafted in the first, second, or third round, those are statements about what kind of wide receivers those particular GMs prefer when you look at what they drafted.
All right, so let's take a look at those guys you mentioned. There's a lot that you just threw out there. So, first round, the 2 players that Detroit picked, Derek Stingley and Trent McDuffie. That was your first round, 5th and 6th pick. Then you mentioned the other ones, the receivers, the wide receivers are the ones you mentioned, correct?
Yes.
All right, so then that would be Seattle's Jameson Williams. Then you have Atlanta's Josh Johnson, and New England picking Treylon Burks. Those are the 3 receivers that were taken in the first round. So those are the ones you're thinking that would have the long, instant impact or long term with their clubs, correct?
Yeah, I mean, you could argue. I'm not necessarily saying this, but one could reasonably argue that Jameson Williams is perhaps the best wide receiver that was in this draft. I mean, I think there's a very good chance I would have selected him. I didn't have a high enough pick to do that. So I was assuming that he was going to be gone by the time my pick came. My pick came at number 16, but that's, like I said earlier, that's a pick that you can't go wrong making that pick. His potentials are excellent, and his actual ratings are not too far behind that. When I look at him and I look at a rookie, I say, well, how am I going to train this guy? I'd probably immediately hit the endurance and get him to 90 in endurance. And then maybe the second training camp, I'd go with hands. But you might do just the opposite. Either way is just as good. I mean, those are the two ratings that hit first, hands and endurance on him.
Oh,
Max
and
those out.
and I forgot to mention Pittsburgh has selected Alex Pierce with the 8th round pick. So apologies to Pittsburgh on forgetting that or overlooking their 1st round pick at receiver. Nick, oh my God, I'm still calling him by his name. Mitch, what did would you agree with him, or do you have a different view on that?
No, I mean, I think that the players that Dean highlighted are definitely all, strong picks and ones that I had, graded up very high. I mean, I don't think we can talk about the draft though without talking about Trevon Walker, however he likes to pronounce it. Since it made such a big deal about him prior to the draft, and the thing that really makes him special, besides some great attributes and ratings, is that you look at where his ratings were, and you look at the overall pool of defensive ends in this draft, and there if you didn't get Trayvon Walker. Or maybe there was one other defensive end, Jermaine Johnson. If you didn't get those two, it the pickings were, I won't say dry, but there was a big drop off. I think between players after those. So I thought that was good, and a couple of picks that might go. I won't say unnoticed since I'm obviously bringing them up, but might not get talked about quite as much, but I think are definitely going to be big impact players at a very important position. And that's the picks by Minnesota and by Anaheim. Those two offensive tackles. Offensive line, you never talk about offensive line until somebody gets sacked or a holding call is made. But these are two tackles that are really, really good, and are should they definitely, when you compare them to other tackles that are already established in the league, they're way up there in their potential ratings, compared to others, not just rookies in the league. So I think those are two under the radar picks that Anaheim and Minnesota made that others are, 5-6 seasons from now, they're going to go, gosh, I wish I'd have gotten a tackle back on that draft. So I think those were good picks for them.
Now, now that we've gone over the 1st round, 2nd round pick, what's your opinion of the players that was taken in the 2nd round?
Well, I think there was a lot of first round talent that was picked in the 2nd round. I'm looking there. I mean, the pick that I made, George Pickens, the wide receiver. I actually had him as a first round grade. I was able to get him with the 15th pick in the 2nd round, so I felt really good about that. As you can imagine. I think there were some other players there that scored out well, or could have potentially been 1st round picks, but maybe slid just a little bit as we're looking at it. So Christopher Allen. I mean, again, Minnesota, I thought had an extraordinary draft. I think they were able to pick a lot of players. Um, I guess get a lot of good value for where they were drafting, as far as their draft order versus who they were able to pick. Um, I had Josh Allen, not Josh Allen. Good grief! I had Chris Allen. I go, that's a 3rd round pick I'm looking at, but as you see there, you know he was drafted at the 4th pick of the 3rd round. I had that Chris Allen. I had him rated as, quite frankly, the number 19 player in the draft at linebacker. So he'd have been the first pick of the 2nd round, right? If we just went down the list there. So I think he got a steal there. So I think there was a lot of good players in this draft, and we'll talk a little bit more analysis around wide receiver in just a minute. But I don't think granted, I did my bell curve grades, so somebody had to get A's and somebody had to get F's. But other than some of our teams like Washington, Los Angeles, I want to say to Chicago, New York, where their picks, they didn't have any picks in the first 3 or 4 rounds of the draft. Yeah, their quality picks might not have been as high as some others, but for the most part, I think a lot of teams got some solid players.
Well, you gave me an F for my draft last year, and I didn't have any draft picks at all.
Well, yeah, well, if you don't draft anybody, you get an F for the draft.
Well, I guess you could have. I guess you could have at least given me an incomplete grade for not.
Yeah, I was
showing
going
up.
to say incomplete on that if you didn't have anything, and give him his money, give him his tuition money back too.
Well, if y'all have ever watched, the movie Old School, Blue died, and they still marked him as being, present because they didn't take him off the list. So I guess I categorized Dean as Old Blue last year. So
Some of those, some of those criteria might be in the need of a little reform. I think the safety I picked with the third pick in the second round is pretty solid as well. I was very pleased to get that choice, as well.
yeah, I think the linebacker cores, again, another position that I put linebacker core as an impact position. Um,
Well, it is.
And and I look at that third round. I know I already highlighted Minnesota with Christopher Allen, but Vegas getting Asamoah. That's another player that, quite frankly, when I look at my board and how I put those out, I have Asamoah as my 16th rated player. And so I think Vegas had a fantastic draft, not just in volume because they had so many picks, but I think there's probably a lot of us, me included, thinking, all right, new coach, a bunch of picks, he's gonna mess this up. He didn't mess it up. He did really well, and so
I would
hats
have
off
told
to
you Neil
hats off
scout
to
the
him.
draft pool well and would take good picks. I would have told you that before the draft.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think with all those picks that Vegas had, I mean, it's you can't really go wrong. I'm sure there was a whole bunch of other coaches out there saying, "Man, how did he get that many picks?" And if he didn't come out with anything less than an A, it'd be like, "Dude, what are you doing?"
You could go. Seeing people with high picks make bad choices. So,
Yeah,
if he made bad choices, you could easily say, "Oh yeah, look at all these picks that Neil did. He gets a D for the draft." But he didn't. He made very solid choices.
yep, he
So
did, and a lot of players fell to. I mean, there was a lot of choices out there, but I think he definitely. I mean, he first off had that massive fire sale and picked up a lot of it, but he's definitely stocked up the talent for seasons to come, and it's going to be interesting to see how he puts all those assets out there. I mean, as we had talked pre-show, you can get all the good players, but now it's going to come down to your play design and your play calling.
yeah,
But
it's one
definitely had a
thing.
good draft.
It's one thing to have quantity of draft picks, a lot of picks, but at any given individual pick, as far as making good decisions to pick the player that you need and the best player at that position, and in some instances, take the best player available. Even no matter how few or how many draft picks you have, it's still a matter of making a quality pick with each individual pick selection that you make. And you look at this draft, and Neil definitely made quality picks with certainly most or a high percentage of the selections that he made. He picked up a lot of solid players with those picks. So it's both quantity and quality.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. Would you agree with that also, Mitch?
It does sound like we all agree that Las Vegas did a great job as a still somewhat rookie. Well, yeah, he would have been a rookie coach because he didn't join in till halfway through the season. So we'll still call him a rookie for this draft, his first one. So I think we all agree that our one of our rookie coaches uh, outperformed what many rookie coaches typically do in drafts, especially with the volume of picks that he had. I will say in previous years, a rookie coach that many picks, we'd have had a lot of first, second, third round talent available in the fourth, fifth, and sixth round. Fast with all those. So, congratulations to our friend there in Vegas.
Okay. Now, as we go through the draft, we've talked about first, second, and third round. Touched a little bit on the fourth, but what did you see as far as any steals that you saw in the later rounds? I'd say continuing with the fourth, fifth, sixth, and seventh. Anything that you saw from your profiles
Yeah,
that someone walked away with a major steal?
yeah. I'll tell you, Dean. I know that I aggravate you sometimes with some of my comments and ratings and stuff, but I'm going to give you a compliment here, and a sincere compliment. When I look at the fourth round, and again going back to that linebacker spot, Channing Tindall, not his cousin Channing Tatum, but Channing Tindall here, fourth round, 10th overall pick. For me, I had him as a number 22 grade out there, as far as linebacker, as far as overall draft. So I think you got a second round talent there in the fourth round. So congratulations on that.
Thanks. I was glad to get him, but I was equally glad to get Kevin Austin at that 4-2 pick, which I think that was a steal too. I didn't expect him to fall that low. I mean, he was like one of the one. I actually considered him when I was doing the 16th pick overall.
Yeah.
And I would have viewed him as a good pick in round two, but he was sitting there at 4-2, and I was surprised a few picks immediately before the 4-2 that he didn't get taken. So, that was a draft pick based on opportunity.
Yeah.
I wasn't going to let that pass.
And I'll tell you another pick here in that fourth round that Thomas and I, we traded a couple of emails after he made this pick, because I think it might have been his first pick in the draft. I don't think, because he didn't have any early round picks, but that Jalen Tolbert, there at 416. I mean, I had him graded out as number 23 in my board at basically a second round talent that he got late in the fourth round. I guess I think it might have been his first pick of the day, and so I thought he made a great pick and got a steal there in the fourth round.
Yeah, that was a solid choice. And I told Sean, we were chatting about online, I said, look at that wide receiver that the Jets just drafted. That's a classic kind of wide receiver that the Jets drafted. And they're very successful with players like that. So that was a really good choice too.
Yeah.
All right. So as we continue moving on down that line, what did you see in the fifth round, in the sixth round, and in the seventh?
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you this. I sent Barney an email after this one. That stupid there, Turner Yell, that safety, that DeLorean, I don't know, maybe Back to the Future here. But that fourth pick in the fifth round, that safety, I had an eyeball in him for 3 rounds. And thinking, all right, nobody's going to pick him because of, I think maybe his speed rating or something was, maybe not as sexy as some of these others out there. But I had him as a third round talent at safety, and got him there in the fifth round. And I think he was the 11th safety picked in the draft. And I had him rated as a top 5 safety. So I thought that was another great. Again, Minnesota had in the way I look at players, Minnesota had a fantastic day.
That seemed was very solid. I was looking at him too, and I even considered him when I took Brian Cook. And I think it was 1 or 2 of the ratings where I thought Cook had an edge over him, so that's why I made that choice. But I seriously considered him as well. I'm surprised he lasted that long. I think he should have gone somewhere at least in the late second, early third.
Yeah. Well, I tell you, the winner of the fifth round, though, let's just call it what it is, the Giants. Christian Watson, who, even before the boost, I had him as a talent, I think, within the first couple of rounds of the draft. Well, he got drafted in the fifth round. He got that boost, and now he has the number one overall potential ratings of all wide receivers. So I think the that might be the steal of the draft right there for the Giants.
Yeah, I'd be surprised of him to get that picked up that quick. I mean, hey, the boost it helped out, and I saw that we talked about it pre-show where your Matrix. I mean, he made that jump from there. So let's go down to the seventh round, and then we'll go into the second segment of the show. What did you see in the seventh round? I know the pickings are kind of thin at that point, but anything there that stands out?
I think Carson Strong, the quarterback that New Orleans picked, I had him as my third overall quarterback. I mean, you look at his ratings, he can be a solid backup, here for a couple of years until he, builds up some ratings. But I actually had considered maybe drafting him and thinking if I could, hide him on the practice squad, for a couple of years. So I thought that was a nice pick for New Orleans, one that kind of stick out to me. I'm trying to look through here. I don't know, Dean. What do you think?
I think we need to be very wary about trying to hide anyone on the practice squad because the Sharks are out there, and those practice squads are going to be poached. So that's something for folks to keep in mind. I think it is a good thing that we're going to be able to put, what you say was 3 older players in the practice squad.
Yeah.
And the reason to do that, and I'm going to have one player in the practice squad who's going to be an older player, and that's because you don't put some of these valuable rookies in. My rookies are all top 4 rounds. That's all I had. I traded up in the draft and traded out of some of the lower picks. So no one that I drafted is. I would be crazy to think that I could hide any of those guys in the practice squad. So none of them are practice squad material for that reason. And that drove some of the trades I made in order to narrow my roster down to fewer enough players that none of those guys I was drafting in the 4th round are going to practice squad. If anyone thinks any of those guys are going to practice squad and they're going to poach them, not happening. Sad day for you.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. And the only other thing on the 7th round, I picked the halfback there to kind of fill my 4th. I like to keep 4 halfbacks, and so I picked that guy Abram Smith, who I had as my 3rd overall running back. But running back position as a whole was, in my opinion, a little bit light, compared to other positions. So, even though he was when I kind of looked at the board, I think I got him maybe a round or 2 behind what I had him graded at. But I think he's going to be a solid player. But I also think Algiers, the player that the Jets picked up, I think he's got a chance. There might be one that might have to spend a year or 2 on the practice squad, but I think that one's got a solid future for sure out there. And then Zonovan Knight, Detroit. I think those 3 running backs there, 3 or 4 running backs there drafted in the 7th round. I think we're good picks for the 7th round, and I think they'll be good. I don't think they'll be starters by any means, but I think they'll play a role on their teams sooner rather than later. So that's all I got on that one.
All right. So we're going to pivot from that. I think we pretty much covered it. And we're going to go to the second segment, which we talked about was the analysis. And I know that Mitch put together presentation, and what we're going to do for you guys, we're going to even have that presentation Hopefully, we can get it up for you guys so you can see it, and then record it, and then I'll be added on the show. So, if you want to go ahead and pull yours, put yours up there,
Yeah,
Mitch, and then we can
yeah.
continue on with the show.
Well, you say up in the presentation, I feel people are thinking, "Oh crap, is he about to try to sell me a timeshare? What the heck do we have to do here?" That's right, everybody. If you give me 90 minutes of your time, I'll give you 2 tickets to Disney World.
There you go.
So,
There, yeah. Deal. Handle his little timeshare and go along with that. So
Yeah,
yes.
I'm not buying that bill goods.
You're not gonna buy it. You're not gonna buy it. Okay.
Dean's like, I ain't buying nothing you're selling, dude. No. Anyway, but hey, but no, hopefully y'all can see this here on the show. But what I wanted to do is share with y'all because after the draft, and I did, my PNFL news rankings and ratings. I know there were some questions, and quite frankly, I started to kind of question too about, hey, what's the deal with the wide receivers? Because I think of the 18 teams, right, we have, when I was, ranking out the overall draft grades, and I put the best player drafted by each team. I think 9 of the teams or 8 of the teams, I had their highest rated player based on my calculations as a wide receiver. And I know Dean was like, 9 or wide receivers, kind of questioning that. And then Jerry and I, we had a good little back and forth email conversation about it, and started thinking, maybe I did somehow put a little bit too much weighting on the wide receivers because this maybe doesn't make as much sense. And so I actually went back and made a little of adjustment to how I'll probably look at some things the next draft. But regardless, as I was kind of digging into this, I figured out and I uncovered exactly why these wide receivers seem to be popping up all over the place and, quite frankly, high on the board. So I want to kind of share this with you so y'all can see it, but also too, it might give you some ideas about how you want to put together your draft boards in coming seasons as well. And so um, on the screen, hopefully you're able to see here, this is what I call my Wizard of Oz draft machine that I use to come up with my draft rankings of players at each position. And you can I won't go through all the breakdowns, but I um, take a look at the percentile that these players are at in actual ratings, potential ratings. Kind of grade out their position, whether it's a high impact position or not. Anyway, all that, and I come up with a weighted average, and then I can rank them, from player 1 to 378, regardless of position. But let's focus here on these wide receivers. All right, so some of this here, like you see, your Christian Watson's number 1. Well, I pulled this together for today after the boosts have been added. So Christian Watson was not my overall number 1 pick from the draft before the boost started. So FYI, before y'all completely tune out when you see that. But when we look at the wide receivers in particular, this is what stood out to me when I started to go back and analyze some of this stuff. So I'm going to select the wide receivers here. And as you can see, the way I have the weighted rankings out, I had, was it 6 wide receivers? So we'll include Watson in this. 6 wide receivers that graded out to be first round talents. Okay. Doesn't mean everybody 6 teams needed a wide receiver in the first round, but based on how I ranked the talent, there's 6 players at the wide receiver position that graded out there. Well, then there was a couple of wide receivers that graded out at second round talent. Was this 4 others at third round talent? So I mean, overall, for the first 4 rounds, I had 17 wide receivers that graded out with fourth round grades or higher, and that's quite a bit, especially the first round talents, where I had 6 players with first round talent, and I'm like, okay, what's the deal with that? That just seems a lot. Well, when I look at this, and I look at this particular right here, potential percentile, which what this is showing me is if I were to take all of the draftees of the rookie pool and I, calculate their potential the ratings or add up their potential ratings, and I then basically divide that by the number of overall wide receivers in the league. Okay, there's like 353 of them. This is where the percentile that this wide receiver would fall into. So if I just rank this here, you could see that in this rookie pool, all right, there are 6 wide receivers that when we compare that to all of the wide receivers in the league, that based on the potential ratings are already the top 10%. Okay. Well, that might be why they graded out to be first round picks. It's, yeah, I do have a percentage of my formula around actual ratings, but since these are for draft picks, it does lean more on potential side. But even beyond that, you come down here and look at some of these other wide receivers. You got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. You've got 9 other wide receivers in this rookie class that just based on their potential ratings alone already would rank in the top 25% of the entire draft pool. All right. So, I mean, that's, overall, that's, 15 players that, based on potential, already in the top 25%. Now, that's not the only reason you draft somebody, because as Dean and Mark and I were talking earlier before the show, you can have somebody with super high potentials, but, if their actual ratings when you draft them are really low, you're never going to get them there. So that's why you might see, someone who, is like for here, for example, they're the 16th, they'd be the 16th percentile in potentials, but I have them rated as a 4th round grade. Why? Because they rank in the 55th percentile of all wide receivers and where their current actual ratings are. So it's going to take a few training camps to get that wide receiver where they need to be versus, let's say, obviously, say the first round pick now, to get there. So, bottom line is the wide receiver pool this year was loaded compared to the ratings of all the wide receivers in the league. How does that compare to some other positions that are out there?
Let me ask you a quick question
Sure. Yeah.
before you advance from that.
Yeah.
I just noticed because it stood out, not because it's my pick, because it stood out.
Yeah.
Go back to the previous screen.
Okay. Oh,
And
hang on. You talking about this right here, you mean?
yeah, okay. Look at the screen, and it only stood out not because it was my pick, because I noticed the numbers there. Yeah, you have what's that, a 20.96, and then the actual 7.93. That kind of stands out.
So here's what that's saying, Dean, is that so Josh Johnson, who I have on my grade pool as a 4th round pick. Okay. Now, here's what this is saying. So right now, going into training camp, Josh Johnson, when you compare him to all of the other wide receivers in the league, in actual ratings, he's actually in the top 8 percentile. So he's kind of ready to play. Okay. What this is saying, though, is that based on potentials, he'd be in basically the 21st percentile, meaning that a lot of other players, their potentials are higher, but they're not as ready to play today as Josh Johnson.
Okay, that's why he went at 16, because I was looking for someone who's going to play this season.
Yeah, so if you're looking for somebody that's ready to play today and, doesn't need a lot of extra training and still Josh Johnson's your guy. Absolutely. So that's what that's saying. So his potentials are still in the top 20%, basically. So, I mean, that's still some solid potentials. He's just closer to those potentials than these other players are.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, it just definitely stood out to see 20.96 and 7.93 to the left.
Yeah, I was wondering if he's going to explain that. You happen to answer the question. You happen to ask the question before I could ask it.
No. Thanks for asking the question, because I think that does kind of stand out there. So no, that's it. So that's what that's saying there. Any other questions before we move on? Because I have a special deal behind door number 3. Anyway,
I think that kind of gave a lot of
yeah,
insight on that, what goes into the plan and how you factor that in. Because I know the
yeah,
emails was going around, everybody was commenting on the grades afterwards, and
right,
calling it rigged.
yeah, right,
but
yeah,
it kind of gives a little insight into that and
yeah,
kind of opens it up a little bit more, which I really like about what we're doing here. Is it
yeah.
kind of it digs into much deeper, which I think makes the game more exciting and makes the league more exciting. So
Yeah.
I think
And
with
I'll say this one thing here, Mark, and I'll leave this alone. But this is why it's making such a big deal prior to the draft about Trevon Walker. Okay, because I thought if you look at the defensive ends here, right, and I have Trevon Walker, here obviously my number one DN in the league. Well, when you compare Trevon Walker's potentials to all the other defensive ends in the league, he's in the top 5%, right? Fourth percentile, right? And he's already in the top 26, almost top quarter before training camp. So this dude, in my eyes, is a beast. Well, when you look at the other DNs in this draft, Jermaine Johnson, I mean, it's going to be a good player. And so, Las Vegas got a good player in Jermaine Johnson. I'm not saying that they didn't get a good player at all. He's got potentials to be in the top 12% of the league, which is fantastic. But he's starting out in the 45th percentile in actual. So it's going to take a couple, three training camps to maybe get him to where Las Vegas wants to be. But then you come here, right? You see, well, this Andre Anthony. I'm sorry, Andre Anthony didn't even get drafted. But gosh, he's in the top 17th percentile of potential ratings. Why in the heck would anybody draft this guy? Well, go look over here, right? He ranks basically in the 90th percentile of
so he's
actual.
way down there.
Yeah, it's gonna take 6 years to get this dude. He's gonna be ready to retire by the time we get him trained. And so, he's one that, maybe you go pick him up as a free agent right now. And again, try to hide him on the practice squad for 3 seasons before you have to make a decision on whether you want to, keep him or not. But yeah, that's why somebody like him will go undrafted. But then you have myself here. I picked old Arnold, because, his potential percentile is not as high. But hey, I'm going to be able to get him there a little bit faster. So anyway,
I want to add a note of realism to all this talk about
yeah,
draft analysis
yeah,
because this is really, I think, will ultimately be the real test of which of these draft picks ends up being worthwhile draft picks and which ones will not ultimately or will contribute to your teams. The other night, I was looking at like my last 8 to 10 drafts and looking at the drafts on the website under the history section. And what I was looking at is in each draft, over the last 8 years, 8 seasons, I was looking at which of these players are still on my team and which ones are not. And that's really the ultimate test. You look at years later, you look at these draft picks, are they still on your team? Were they on your team for a number of years? Did they make a contribution? Were they starting players or were they important role players? Or, did you draft someone in the third round and, maybe you traded him away or you don't remember whatever happened to him? And, those one couple players I looked at and I looked at, and it's, hindsight's 2020 for us. I look back and think, what was I thinking when I drafted that player? That looks like a really bad choice now. And in some instances, I look back at players and think, wow, that was a solid choice. And that player's still on my team, still a major role player, is contributing as a starter or is, so I think ultimately the best analysis, no matter how much you do to analyze the numbers and rank them and this is all interesting stuff. I'm not downplaying it, but ultimately, this draft class, I think if you review this draft class 5 seasons from now, you'll really see which teams did better and others because you'll see which of those players, whether they're still on the teams they were drafted to or they're traded, which of those players are ultimately solid starters and making a contribution to someone's team and which one's one of them not. And that's ultimately the real test.
Yep, I definitely agree with that. Would you agree with that, Mitch?
Yeah, I think if you draft well, you're going to end up happy with the players you have, and you're going to keep them. Yeah.
All right. So, as we are coming to wrap up, because we're at the 40-minute mark, there goes our normal 35 minutes. So, as I would take a little, kind of condense it down as quickly as we can with the draft. The draft being completed, and then we're doing a training camp. As you guys know, training camp is going to be due, I believe, on Sunday. It has to be completed. One thing that I want to make sure everyone's aware of, and there was some discussion about this, when you're doing your training camp, and I believe some people were saying, well, how do I know where we round up, if it's going to round up or if it's going to round down? I believe it was either Richard or Charlie had sent out their matrix, which kind of help out, where basically you just take the numbers and you can copy it and paste it into the to another spreadsheet, and it automatically breaks it down. If you put 5 points in, 10, 15, 20, all the way up to 65%, you see where the numbers are at. And I wanted to make sure that everyone's aware of this, and you guys can kind of back me up on this. If the numbers, if the last digit on the numbers, I believe, is even, isn't it that the number that when you do your training is going to, go ahead?
Even rounds down and odd rounds up. But the one thing keep in mind, if you have a player that's like 83 actual and 86 potential, and you, like I said, a player with 83 endurance and 86 potential, and you think, I'm going to hit that with 50% to gain 2 out of the 3 points, even though the 83 is odd, keep in mind, when you hit that with 50%, the 83 becomes 84.5, and that's going to round down because at that point it's the 84 that's rounding up or down. So that play you'd have to hit with 55%, so he's at 84.6 after training camp, and then that will round up to 85. So
okay. So if the guy's at 84.6, that 0.6 is what's going to determine if it goes up or down, correct?
No, not the 0.6. It's the whole number.
Okay.
It's the whole number. And what Dean's saying is that but you might be looking at your player and he's currently at 83, which that's an odd number. So if you just want to go to 84, you would just need to get him to 83.5. However, if you want to take that 83 and take him to a rating of 85, you'd have to use a percentage to get to 84.55 or 84.6, because that would now be an even whole number to move up. That's what he's saying.
right, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, if it's exactly 84.5, it rounds down. If you put enough on that to get it to like 84.5 or 84.6 or higher, it rounds up.
All right. So I just want to make sure you guys are aware of that, because I know there was some discussion about that. So just want to kind of throw that little tidbit out there to kind of help clear it up for you guys.
And if you have any questions, feel free to reach out. I'll answer a question for a point. I'm joking. I'm happy to answer any questions, just like I know Mark and Dean and many others are too.
You probably want that draft pick. So, yeah. Good.
Yeah.
Correct answer is a first round draft pick.
That's right. Yeah, I'll answer you. Yeah, I'll answer you for a point, but I'll give you a right answer for a first round draft pick.
There you go. All right, so we're well over time, but hopefully this kind of gave you guys a bunch of things to look at, and possibly you guys are listening to it while you're doing your training camp. So as we come to wrap this up, just going to kind of go around the table one more time. Any final words that you have over there, Dean?
No, I think just everyone get their training camp in, and we can get closer to starting another season.
All right. Any final words out there, Professor Grawl, with your analysis and spreadsheet?
The Wizard of Odd draft box here. No, looking forward to like Dee said, getting this training camp out of the way, getting these practice squads set up, and we're just a couple of weeks out from another season started. We got some new coaches. They're both in my division. So look forward to that. And all we can do now is just say, let's get it.